Breaking! The court has spoken again, and this time, everything changes. It started in a courtroom in 2015. Over a decade later, it is still being fought in courtrooms, and right now, on April 4th, 2026, the courtroom has just fired its most explosive shot yet. The appeal court has ordered the immediate transfer of Nnamdi Kanu from Sokoto State to Abuja. And for anyone who has followed this case from the very beginning, that single directive carries the weight of 10 years of legal warfare. This is not just news, this is history, and to understand why, you need to go back to where it all began. Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, was first arrested in October 2015 in Lagos. Federal authorities charged him with treasonable felony, igniting a legal battle that would stretch across 4 judges, multiple courtrooms, 2 arrests, and 1 extraordinary international abduction. The case, filed as FHC/ABJ/CR/383/2015, became and remains the most politically charged criminal proceeding in modern Nigerian history. In the early years, the trial was plagued by chaos. Justice Ahmed Mohammed stepped down after defense protests. Justice John Soho withdrew following a petition. Then came Justice Binta Nyako, who granted Kanu conditional bail on health grounds in 2017, only for everything to collapse spectacularly when the Nigerian military launched Operation Python Dance 2 in Abia State, storming Kanu's residence. He fled the country, charges were suspended, the courtroom went quiet. But the courtroom never stays quiet in this case. In June 2021, Kanu was dramatically rearrested, not in Nigeria, but in Kenya, and controversially rendered back to Abuja. His defense team immediately cried foul, and they took it to court. On October 13, 2022, the appeal court delivered a bombshell ruling. Kanu's rendition from Kenya violated international law. The court discharged him of the terrorism charges entirely. It was a stunning legal victory, but the federal government was not done. The government ran straight to the Supreme Court. In 2023, the Supreme Court overturned the appeal court's discharge, reinstating the terrorism charges and ordering the case back to the federal high court. The legal reset button had been pressed again. Then, in 2024, Kanu challenged IPOB's proscription at the appeal court, arguing that the terrorist designation was unlawful. The court dismissed the appeal, upholding IPOB's proscribed status and clearing the way for all terrorism-related charges to stand. The walls were closing in. The case was reassigned to Justice James Omotosho, the 4th judge to take the wheel in this decade-long drama. In March 2025, Kanu was rearraigned on a 7-count amended charge covering terrorism and treasonable felony. What followed was a trial unlike anything seen in a Nigerian courtroom. In October 2025, Kanu fired his entire legal team, declared there was no valid charge against him, and chose to represent himself. He repeatedly refused to open his defense. The judge waited, then waited some more. Eventually, Justice Omotosho ruled that Kanu had waived his right to mount a defense. On November 20, 2025, the judgment came down like a hammer. Guilty on all 7 counts, life imprisonment. It was a verdict that shook southeast Nigeria to its core and sent shockwaves far beyond the country's borders. But Kanu, true to a decade of relentless legal fighting, did not accept it lying down. On February 4, 2026, he personally signed a 22-ground notice of appeal, demanding that the Court of Appeal quash every conviction, set aside every sentence, and discharge and acquit him of all charges. Among his most explosive arguments, that Justice Omotosho never resolved the foundational disruption caused by Operation Python Dance 2 back in 2017, that a pending preliminary objection was ignored before judgment was delivered, and critically, that he was sentenced to life imprisonment without being given allocutus, the constitutionally guaranteed right to address the court before sentencing. He argued that his silence was a tactical legal decision, not a waiver, and that the judge mischaracterized it entirely. That appeal is now live, and it has produced its first major consequence. The appeal court's order on April 4, 2026, directing the urgent transfer of Kanu from Sokoto State to Abuja is directly connected to those appeal proceedings. With critical submissions approaching and Kanu having declared his intention to argue his own case in person before the appellate court, his physical presence in Abuja is no longer optional. It is essential. The court has made that clear. And this is where the drama of the past 24 hours explodes into full view. Just before the transfer order made headlines, Aloy Ejimakor, the man at the center of many of Kanu's legal victories, led a delegation to the Sokoto State Correctional Facility. Beside him was Prince Emmanuel Kanu, Kanu's biological brother. What they found when they arrived told its own story: armed guards, tight surveillance, controlled conditions, a man being held like a state secret. Yet, according to Ejimakor, Kanu remains mentally sharp, unbroken, and deeply grateful. Ejimakor did not mince words. He compared Kanu's imprisonment to Nelson Mandela's years on Robben Island. That is not a casual analogy. Mandela walked out of prison and changed history. The comparison is a declaration of intent. But while that meeting was taking place, something alarming was unfolding just outside. A bandit attack struck Rufa village in Raba local government area, roughly 25 to 40 minutes from the facility where Kanu is being held. The delegation was not in danger. Their route never passed through that area. But the incident has reignited a burning question that Kanu's legal team has been raising for months. Why was Sokoto, a state with documented armed bandit activity, chosen as the detention location for Nigeria's highest-profile convict? Authorities called it safe. The security record says something far more complicated. With the transfer now ordered, a logistical question of enormous significance emerges. How will Kanu be moved? A road journey through regions with security concerns risks delay, exposure, and potential incident, complications that could directly affect appeal timelines. An air transfer would be faster and more secure, but requires rapid coordination at the highest levels. The choice made will reveal exactly how seriously the government is treating both the court's directive and Kanu's safety. On the international front, another front is opening. Kanu's wife is preparing formal documentation to send to Pope Francis at the Vatican, a bold move that would elevate this case from a domestic legal dispute into a matter of global moral scrutiny. It mirrors the pattern of international pressure that has already yielded results. A Kenyan court ruled in 2025 that Kanu's 2021 abduction and rendition were unlawful, awarding 10 million Kenyan shillings in damages. The world has been watching, and now the Vatican is formally invited to watch too. Inside the support movement, however, all is not unified. Tensions are surfacing between factions within Kanu's network, particularly between those aligned with Ejimakor and other elements of the broader movement. At a moment when the appeal demands total focus and strategic solidarity, internal divisions threaten to become a distraction. Statements expected in the coming hours could clarify or deepen those fault lines. 10 years ago, this case began with an arrest and a courtroom. Today, it is heading back to the courtroom, this time with a life sentence on the line, an appeal bristling with 22 grounds of challenge, a transfer order just issued, and the world watching more closely than ever before. Every twist in this case has been decided in a courtroom. Every reversal, every victory, every defeat, the court has been the battlefield. And right now, the court is calling again. What happens next in that courtroom will not simply determine the fate of one man. It will test the limits of Nigerian law, the integrity of its institutions, and whether a decade of legal warfare can finally produce a definitive answer. The next chapter is being written right now in Abuja.